Hi, it's Dr. Bird. It is time for story time, and I am happy to be here. The lighting's a little different today, but I'm working on it. We're just going to roll with this today, okay? Um, yeah, I'm happy to do a bit of a change of pace. I'm in the middle of helping my parents with a moving sale. So, that's a lot of emotional work as well as physical work. And this is a nice little change, even though this is a lot of emotional work for me. It's still worth it to do something different. Apparently my hair, I had it pulled back all day. And so now it's all frizzy. That's kind of fun. Okay. So, hi. So nice to be here. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for those of you who are here live. Hey there. And thank you for watching later if you're catching this later. And I want to say a quick thank you to all the different ways that you, the person watching, support me in what I'm doing. I love it when people, share a link, share a video with a friend, someone that you think might also enjoy what I'm up to, someone who might benefit from what I'm doing. I've had a lot of people commenting in the last couple of weeks that it's just very helpful to have someone name all these things. And that's exactly why I'm doing the story time. And, is to just name a bunch of this stuff. So that is why I'm doing this. So I hope that you will do that you'll share a video with someone that you think might benefit from it, or just, because that's often leads to more subscriptions, and that's just all the things kind of work together. That's really great. I'm really deeply grateful to the people who chip in a little bit each month to support me. There are a lot of things I'm working on right now that those funding that funding goes to make it possible for me to work on these things. So I'm just grateful for all the various ways that people hear live and spreading the word. Just grateful for all the different ways that people support what I'm doing and remind me or let me know that it is important and you do value it. And so all of those pieces, just it's a little scattered today. I think I'm a little bit out of it. So thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for, telling other people about it. So I want to give a quick shout out. I do also work on a podcast. Our first season, Wild Olive, game-changing conversation about literature, culture, and the Bible. I've been doing that with a literature professor who lives in Chicago. She teaches at Columbia College there in Chicago. And we had a really good time. Our first season, I believe episode 13 recently dropped, and 14 and 15 are coming out in August. And every couple of weeks we drop an episode. So season 2 will start in October. Kind of fun stuff, fun conversations where we talk about biblical content, primarily through a literary lens, but also addressing where a lot of conservative people tend to get hung up, and address it and talk about it, and then talk about like other ways of reading and other ways of thinking about reading the Bible. So that's what that podcast is all about. And you can find Wild Olive anywhere you access podcasts. So I forgot to plug that last week when I was doing talking about all the things I've got going on. So anyway, very exciting news. Also, for those of you who've been tracking with me, I did just submit the last round of revisions for my manuscript this morning. My hair is cracking me up. So fun. The last round of revisions and indexing. So like the book is happening soon. We're coming together. It's very exciting. So I'd like to do story time. I'm going to read, I think in the description, I need to change the description. I think I said Deuteronomy and I meant to say Numbers. There's an episode in Numbers that I want to talk about. And then we'll read 1 or 2 stories from Judges. Because it's easy stuff for me to do. I need to do some prep work for the laws in Deuteronomy, and I just haven't had a chance because of book stuff and moving. So we're going to stuff that's easy to do for me today. So what that means is we're going to look at Numbers chapter 5. And if you're familiar with this, if you're familiar with this story, it's a great one. I'm kidding. This is the story that is in Numbers 5, starts in verse 11. And it's about how a man is to handle if his woman is going astray, or if he is suspicious of her being unfaithful to him. It's really interesting because it's not the same as the clear-cut adultery laws. If you catch them, kill them both, right? That kind of thing. It's not that. And this is a really interesting one. I have to be honest, I haven't read a whole lot of scholarship on it, so I'm going to tread lightly in terms of that element. But what I find interesting is this issue of suspicion that's involved, and that there's such a complex, extended description of what to do and how to handle it. And really what's being described essentially is a form of terminating a pregnancy. Oh, who knew, right? Like there's a story about how to terminate an unintended pregnancy in the Bible. It's just not in her hands. It's in the hands of her man or her husband. Okay. So there's all that. So we're going to look at Numbers chapter 5, and then we'll look over in a couple stories in Judges today. We'll see how it goes. And here we go. We have the beginning of chapter 5 is talking about leprosy, which is so interesting in and of itself to me. And then, okay, keep moving. Just keep moving. Chapter 5 of Numbers, starting in verse 11. The Lord spoke to Moses. Yeah, I was the reason I'm pausing is because in the story time last week, I read chapter 3 of my book that's coming out in a couple months, which is the passage on Matthew 19, which is about divorce, and which is really disturbing because it shows that Jesus, or whoever, the guy we're projecting all these ideas onto, really did think of sex in the same way that they did in the Hebrew Bible, which is it's a thing that a man does to like claim a woman, and that when you have sex, you like belong to each other, forever, which some people still believe and hold on to, which is so fascinating and tragic. But why am I saying this? Oh, right. So we were talking about laws, and I think it must have been an earlier one. Sorry, it was an earlier one. Someone was commenting on one about Moses, and he said, and then there's that story when Moses tells so-and-so to kill all the women and children, and made some sort of comparison to, even that level of like pseudo genocide, right? Doesn't happen. Like who in recent history behaves that way, like that kind of just kill them all, right? Nobody. Like who do we compare that to? And Moses also leads in chapter 32 of Exodus. Moses leads men in the community, out killing their neighbors and friends one day. And all of those who step forward to do that have ordained themselves priests for the Lord. And so they kill 3,000 people, right? I think 3,000 is kind of one of those numbers. It's not a real number. It's just a way to say a whole bunch of people, right? Because it shows up several times in stories. But yeah, I don't know, folks. There's a lot going on that in this collection called the Bible, where the leaders are really, I think we should be asking ourselves whether or not the men are really ones we want to be proud of, emulating. I don't know. I'm just going to do the story now. Okay. Saw Moses, and that made me think of that. And I just thought, I appreciate that someone spoke up, and there's more than just these one little bits and pieces. But he killed someone early on, and anyway. Okay. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, if any man's woman," my English says wife, "any man's woman goes astray and is unfaithful to him, if a man has had intercourse with her, but it is hidden from her man," my English says husband, "so that she is undetected, though she has defiled herself." Notice the reference to defiling yourself with sex with the wrong man, right? "Then, and there is no witness against her, since she was not caught in the act." So basically, if a woman goes astray, has intercourse with someone else, but we can't prove it, right? So you suspect it. People are chatting about it in town. I don't know. Here's the best part. If a spirit of jealousy comes on him, and he is jealous of his wife who has defiled herself. Are you kidding me? Like, really? Because we talk about God as a jealous God, and people are supposed to find a way to make that okay because it's God. And so, God can't be jealous in a bad way, right? So, of course, there's a good way to be jealous. No. And we're going to just justify a husband being jealous about what his woman is doing because it's out of his control. So we're going to justify that. That's what this story is doing, right? Suspicion and jealousy. So if a spirit of jealousy comes on him and he is jealous of his woman, English his wife, who has defiled herself, or if the spirit of jealousy comes on him and he is jealous of his wife, though she has not defiled herself. Are you tracking with this? If he suspects it, if he knows it but can't prove it, if he just thinks it, even if she didn't, there is no way she's getting out of this if her man suspects it or is paranoid and just, right? So here's what you do. If any of these 3 or 4 scenarios is true, this is how you handle that. Then the man shall bring his woman, my English says wife, the man shall bring his woman to the priest, because that's who you want to see in this moment, right? When you're being accused of adultery, right? You want to go talk to the priest. And he shall bring the offering required for her, 1/10 of an ephah of barley flour. He shall pour no oil on it and put no frankincense on it, for it's a grain offering of jealousy, a grain offering of remembrance, bringing iniquity to remembrance. So she's already, right, tried. What's the phrase? She's already been tried and convicted, right? She's guilty, whether or not she is. And, this happens, right? It's not just an ancient setting that I'm mocking. It's some sort of not well-nurtured child growing up to be an immature adult, right? And not being able to handle complex relationships or communication, or I don't know, but it's not just an ancient thing. This is current. And then there are also current, very specific practices currently that are more similar to this than maybe people in the West are aware of. But anyway. Sorry, got a little carried away there. Okay. So here we are. We're bringing a grain offering of remembrance, bringing iniquity to remembrance. All right. Then the priest shall bring her near and shall set her before the Lord. The priest shall take holy water in an earthen vessel and take some of the dust that is on the floor of the tabernacle and put it into the water. Now, I just need to know, what exactly do they think is collecting, dust from the floor of the tabernacle? What kind of stuff do they have going on in the tabernacle that the dust from it is going to be a part of this elixir? I don't get this part at all. And I have looked into it a little bit. I haven't, I've not done a thorough search of reputable, vetted scholarship, I have to be honest. But just this idea, right? Taking holy water, take some of the dust that's on the floor of the tabernacle, put it into the water. The priest shall set the woman before the Lord, dishevel the woman's hair, I think to maybe imitate being caught in the throes of passion. I don't know. And place in her hands the grain offering of remembrance, which is the grain offering of jealousy. So this thing that the man has brought, right, 1/10 of an ephah. In his own hand, the priest shall have the water of bitterness that brings the curse. So, excuse me. Just going to read the footnote on this again. I may or may not fully agree with it, and that's okay. I don't need to agree with these footnotes, but I find it interesting. So the procedure: the priest prepares a mixture of holy water and tabernacle floor dust, potent because of its contact with holy things. in an earthen vessel, which could be broken after use. The priest then brings the woman before the Lord, loosens her hair, a sign of humiliation or potential uncleanness. Ah, that's interesting. Because you rend your hair, you pull out, you pull hair. It's funny because I just thought they were trying to imitate what she looked like. Anyway, and puts the grain offering in her hand. Well, we can see all of those anyway. She takes an oath regarding the suspicions registered. Okay. Anyway, I was wondering if they were going to say something about the curse. So the priest has the water of bitterness that brings the curse. Then the priest shall make her take an oath, saying, if no man has lain with you, if you have not turned aside to uncleanness while under your husband man's authority, be immune to this water of bitterness that brings the curse. Is this magic? What is this? Like, how do we get to say be immune to something? Is that witchcraft? Like, which form of thing are we talking about here? Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm being actually perfectly honest here. I'm being very serious. This priest is doing some juju. Like, what kind is this? If you're innocent, be immune. But if you have gone astray while under your man, English as husband's, authority, if you have defiled yourself, and some man other than your man, English as husband, has had intercourse with you, and then there's this pause, let the priest make the woman take the oath of the curse and say to the woman, the Lord make you an execration and an oath among your people when the Lord makes your uterus drop, your womb discharge. Now, may this water that brings the curse. I was choked on my own spit. Sorry. That's pretty funny. Trying to get all excited and I caused myself to choke to death. Okay. Now may this water that brings the curse enter your bowels and make your womb discharge, your uterus drop. And the woman shall say, does anybody know what she gets to say in response to that? Amen, amen. Okay. So just because I've been indexing, right? I've got all kinds of things from my book on my mind right now. And let me be honest. Let me be clear about something. I'm not a big fan of cheating on your partner when that is like, if you don't have an open relationship, not a big fan of that. Like, I think you need to talk about some stuff, right? And figure out why stepping out is what feels right. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think we need to talk about that. Setting aside the fact that I find it a difficult, I do find it difficult, right? It's not like I'm a fan of people not being loving and caring in their relationships and committed and really, right? It's not, I am a fan of being committed. You know what I'm saying? Like, but what I really, really don't like about all of this is the language and the judgment. We have the language about if you have not turned aside to uncleanness, that language, right? The purity, the cleanness, the defilement. We're just talking about having sex. Like, we're talking about, the defilement, all the negative stuff associated with bodies and sexuality in the Hebrew Bible and in the Newer Testament. It drives me crazy. Could we please stop judging people for being human, for having a sex drive, for having desires, for lusting? Can we please stop judging that and get over ourselves and stop caring about what happens in other people's bedrooms? And, like, I don't know, go feed the kids who are starving. I don't know. Like, why is so much energy spent caring about what other people do in their sex lives? And then, yeah. So there's that. The language around all this stuff, talking about uncleanness, defiling yourself. Right. Okay. I think I've made my point. Guys cheat also. Where exactly that, like that's going all around in the back of my mind, and I wasn't sure how to phrase it. So thank you for that. Guys cheat also. Oh, let's show that. I'm sorry. I'm still new to this part and trying to figure this out. Guys cheat also. Where's the magic potion? Exactly. And thinking about when they talk about adultery, all of the laws are being taught, they're all being said to men. So it's like if your woman commits adultery, if a man commits offends you because they've had sex with your woman, so it's never when you commit adultery. It's when you've had adultery committed against you. You know what I mean? That's not entirely true, but it's always about, right, the other dude. It's never about when you do this. It's when your woman is caught with another man. Anyway, so thank you very much. Constellation Pegasus, you're just tracking. You're tracking. You're helping me out too. So I just want to back up very quickly. Appreciate you hanging in there with me on this. If a man has had intercourse with her, but it's hidden, if a woman goes astray, if this thing has happened and it's undetected, though she has defiled herself. I mean, part of me wanted to just count the number of times we had unclean or defiled in this section. If a spirit of jealousy comes on the man and he's jealous of his wife who has defiled herself again, or if a spirit of jealousy has come and she has not defiled herself, right? 4 times in 3 verses, then you bring her to the priest and and then this is already deemed an iniquity, even though she doesn't have any sort of a trial. The only trial she's getting is this drinking this stuff, right? There's no conversation about it. What the hell's going on, right? She's brought in and you're going to drink this potion and that's going to determine whether you're guilty or not. Like, don't people actually make fun of behaving this way when other people do? Like, when we see religious traditions that are more maybe akin to what we might call indigenous or something, are you tracking with my question or my point here? If you are innocent, this potion will not kill you. If you're not a witch, then the way we're about to try to drown you. Witches float, right? And if you're not a witch, you drown. So yeah, it's the same kind of thing, right? Isn't it? Is it similar to that? Like, if it wasn't the thing about a witch would float, and so the thing about testing to see if she was a witch would kill her if she's not, and then if she is, then we're going to kill her anyway. Like, there's no way out of this. So the other thing about this, just to be very clear, it's talking about this whole thing will make your uterus drop, and it talks about things. Different translations handle the body language or the language about the body parts differently. It talks about thighs in some translations, but really we're just talking about, we're talking about causing the uterus causing a miscarriage. Okay, we have another. You're just so generous today. Researching this stuff is hard. Keeping emotions out of realizing the Bible is nonsense is not easy. I'm really glad you said that, actually, because I very intentionally bring my emotions. You all may have noticed, I very intentionally bring my emotions to this, and not just because I'm like sitting here talking, and it's not about like I'm just trying to be very real and honest. But I'm like that in a classroom. I'm like that anytime I'm teaching or speaking somewhere. This isn't just like because I'm here live and it's my channel and I can do whatever I want. It's really important to me to bring my emotions and reactions and honest engagement anytime I'm doing anything related to teaching, because it's because I've spent enough time in academic circles where people's stoicism is part of the problem, in my opinion, right? Because you're not actually connecting with what's happening in people's lives. If you can actually read this line, the Lord make you an execration and an oath among your people. When the Lord makes your uterus drop, your womb discharge. Now may this water that brings the curse enter your bowels and make your womb discharge, your uterus drop. The woman shall say, Amen, amen. Like, there are people who can read that way, right? And that, I feel like that is part of the problem. We're not actually letting people see what's going on in the scriptures. We're not actually empathizing enough as scholars to actually appreciate how horrific some of the stuff is. So I've done a presentation at the annual conference for my field on this issue of being actually very intentional about bringing emotion into the classroom as an important, actually, element of learning. Because people need to know when something is important. And one of the ways you do that is by regulating, shifting the tone of voice, bringing some excitement or something into what you're doing. And one of the things about scholarship is you're usually taught to be very level-headed and which is important. You got to go there first. You got to be that first, and then you can bring the emotion. But too many people get stuck at being stoic. Too many scholars who are trying to be educators are stuck in stoicism, and it's actually a detriment, in my opinion. Because you're not understanding the point. You're not reflecting that you understand the point. Yeah. I actually sat in on a panel. I oversaw a panel one of the first years I was in as a graduate student, and I was so confused. I was so confused because I couldn't tell if the scholars themselves who were addressing these issues even understood the horrific implications of what they were saying, because they were so flatlined in their voice that I knew that there was a problem, but it was about violence in the New Testament and Christians and Jews, and this issue, the antagonism between them, specifically from Christians to Jews. And a lot of Christians don't see the antagonism and see the problem. And so I didn't know if they were a faithful Christian challenging that this was a problem, or if they were scholars pointing out how problematic it was. And I couldn't tell by the way they read their own scholarship to a crowd of people. Like, I'm so conflicted right now. I don't know what's going on. And that's a thing. That's a thing, right? That happens a lot. I'm just so thankful. Thank you for all the love and super chats. Loved your book. Can't wait for the next. Oh, thank you, Gettysburg Demoniac. What moral statements, advice around the NT would you not want your kids' family members to follow? Oh, well, since you asked, there are two big ones that jump out at me, like in terms of my first response to that question. My first response is the enemy language, the rhetoric that is the idea that we're supposed to love our enemies. I wish we'd stop labeling people enemies. And let's call them something else. Let's call it, if you need a label, sure. But let's stop calling people enemies, because that's like calling people some form of subhuman. It justifies animosity towards that person or group of people, and we don't actually have to understand them. So I'd like to do away with the enemy language. The other thing that I would say is related, and it's the dualistic language that is present in most people's favorite gospel, which is John's gospel. And it is throughout Paul's letters. His rhetoric is very divisive and it's antagonistic. He's rude. He calls people out on stuff. He's very rude about it. He's not calling people in to have a conversation. He's adamant that he's correct. And so there are a lot of conservative preachers and people in conservative spaces who behave similarly. And I can't fault them for it, because there's the scriptures that they are reading daily and that they're memorizing give them that example. So, so the morality around definitive, like certainty, right? That there's the right way and the wrong way. I get that there's a certain point of rearing children where that is what you have to work with, is like kind of a black and white, yes and no, right and wrong. But once it's time to start talking nuance, you don't have anything in scripture to help you with nuance, right? With ethics that I think is part of what you're asking. And I hope I've understood you correctly. And I love the question, because it is also related to what I'm trying to do here in terms of what we see in scripture, and when it talks about things in ways that aren't healthy, how do we do that? So thank you for that question, Gettysburg. Appreciate that. And I'm glad that you enjoyed the book. I also, just FYI, people, I also did the audio. I read the book for the audio so that you get the right tone and inflection, and playfulness when it's there. So thank you for that. I'm going to go read a passage in Judges since we're still here, and if that's all right. And just because it's just like, let's just get some of the nasty stuff out there, right? Let's just do it. Oh, or should we read about Rahab? No, I'll do Rahab a different day when I'm prepared to talk about Rahab. Judges is such an interesting book. It really is. I don't think either sex should be in charge just because. Yeah, yep. It is interesting, the things you all get into in the chat. It's really fun to look back at what you're doing. What am I doing? Are we doing Yael? No, we're not going to do Yael right now. Fighting like a woman, taking a tent peg to someone's temple. That's fighting like a woman. You know what I'm saying? Okay. I'm not a big, I don't endorse fighting either, unless it's like on a mat or in a cage, because you've agreed to like beat the crap out of each other in a cage. But, so we're going to do Jephthah's daughter is what we're going to do. It's really hard to not be like live and like have a whole bunch of you here with me and be like, okay, so what are you coming to this story knowing? So we can chat about it first. It's really hard for me to do that. I want to ask, who's heard about Jephthah and his daughter? We'll do Jephthah. It's 30 minutes. I could just do this on Thursday instead and just wrap it up for today, but I want to keep going for just a little bit longer. All right, so we'll do Jephthah. I'm not going to read the whole chapter because that is long, but let's start with Jephthah's story. So we're in the book of Judges, which is a book that is set up, or that kind of the intention of this book is to show that the people of Israel need a king, because it's not enough with just this random judge leading them, that the judges are not sufficient is essentially what is the big storyline for the book of Judges. This isn't sufficient. The people themselves want a king. So they've got this big set of stories that justify getting a king. Okay. So we're starting out Judges chapter 11. We've had a couple judges prior to this. Now, Jephthah, the Gileadite, so he's from the clan of Gilead, the son of a prostitute, was a mighty warrior. There you go, right? Well, his mother was a sex worker. So what does that mean? Why do we need to say that about his mother? We need to say that because then we'll understand why his brothers, his half siblings, are treating him like crap. That's why we need to know that information. Because apparently a sex worker is not as valuable as a human as non-sex worker females, apparently, right? And children of sex workers are not as valuable, or, as children of other women who don't sell their body for income. I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Okay. I don't agree with what I just said. I'm trying to point out the fact that just because she's a sex worker does not diminish his value as a human in any way, shape, or form. And yet we act as if it does. Okay. Gilead was the father of Jephthah. I mean, he's not just not just a Gileadite, he's actually the son of Gilead. Gilead's woman also bore him sons. So Gilead. So we're taking everything out on the son of Gilead, right? Because Gilead went to get some on the side from a sex worker. And we're going to take it all out on the son, not on the dad. That's so great. Anyway, so his woman, English his wife, also bore him sons. And when his woman, English his wife's sons, grew up, they drove Jephthah away, saying to him, well, yeah, because he's not fully them, right? You shall not inherit anything in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman, and not just any other woman. We need to point out, right? Then Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob. Outlaws collected around Jephthah and went raiding with him. So we get this right, yeah, outlaw because outcasts. Who else are you gonna? What else are you gonna do? All right, so they have this whole thing going on. After time, the Ammonites made war against Israel, and when the Ammonites made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to bring Jephthah from the land of Tob because he was a good warrior. They said to Jephthah, come and be our commander so that we may fight with the Ammonites. And he said to the elders of Gilead, are you not the very ones who rejected me and drove me out of my father's house? Good for you. So why do you come to me now when you're in trouble? And the elders of Gilead said, nevertheless, we have now turned back to you, right? I'm not even going to try to put words to that. So that you may go with us and fight with the Ammonites and become head over us, over all the inhabitants of Gilead. So he said, if you bring me home again to fight with the Ammonites and the Lord gives them over to me, I will be your head. The elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, the Lord will be witness between us. We will surely do as you say. All right. So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and commander, and he spoke all his words before the Lord at Mizpah. Okay. Jephthah sent messengers to the king of Ammonites. What is there between you and me that you have come to me to fight against my land? It's like, what's going on here? And the guy was like, well, because Israel, on coming from Egypt, took away my land from the, you took some away. So restore it. And he's like, not happening. So there's this thing, right, that goes down. So we've got this battle, and that's not the part I care about, right? So there's a battle that's about to take place. What I do care about is what happens over here. They have this thing going on back and forth, blah, blah, blah. Fight, God, Lord, land, the Lord God, Israel, fight, armor, territory, blah, blah, blah. And then, yeah, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah. Dun, dun, dun. And he passed through Gilead and Manasseh. So they've gone to battle, okay? Or they're getting ready to go to battle. He passed on to Mizpah of Gilead, and from Mizpah of Gilead he passed on to the Ammonites. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will give the Ammonites into my hand, then whoever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return victorious from the Ammonites shall be the Lord's, to be offered up by me as a burnt offering. So we do need to pause and say, exactly whom did he think that might be? And I've skipped over the part that tells us that he had a woman who gave him a daughter, and the woman died or left him, whatever. So we know that there is one human in his life living at home. We don't know how many dogs they have or pets, how many goats or whatever. So he makes a thing. He's like, okay, God, if you make me victorious, I will sacrifice whoever greets me coming out of my house when I come home. Okay. And we have another comment here. Constellation Pegasus. Any opinion on the Old Testament 2-witness rule for rape? Jehovah's Witnesses are hardcore on that. Pretty sure it's Old Testament going blank. 2-witness rule for rape? No, there is no 2-witness rule for rape. There's a comment about if a man seduces a woman out in the country, we're going to treat that differently than if he seduces her in town. Like, she can't, in the country, we will grant that she may have been raped because we couldn't have heard if she cried out. But in town, she needed to cry out. Never mind the fact that maybe she's just stunned into silence, and that's like her survival mode is like silent, all that kind of stuff. So no rules around rape. There are very few things around rape in general. Hebrew Bible rules around rape. I need to even think about that. It's never called that, first of all, in any of the laws. It doesn't ever say if you rape a woman, blah, blah, blah. It's always if you take a woman or so two witness, that's really interesting that anyone's hardcore about that. I don't even know where that comes from. There's a two witness law on like making oaths, things like that in the Hebrew Bible, but nothing about and also, do we have any stories that talk about men being raped? We do. I mean, Joseph in Egypt escapes essentially being raped by Pharaoh's woman. Anyway, okay. So back to the story. So if you'll do this, I will sacrifice whoever greets me, which is, like, there's one option here. Okay. But he's still, so why is he doing this? And this is part of the point of the book of Judges, is that he's capable, all this stuff, and they're happy to have his help. And yet even he isn't kind of making the best decisions. And that's part of the point of the book. All these rulers or leaders are good for some things, but not for everything. Not the best choice. But here we go. So Jephthah crossed over to the Ammonites to fight against them, and the Lord gave them into his hand. He inflicted a massive defeat on them from Aurora to the neighborhood of Minnith, 20 towns, and as far as Abdel Keramim. So the Ammonites were subdued before the people of Israel. Fantastic. And Jephthah came to his home at Mizpah. Drumroll, please. And there was his daughter coming out to meet him with timbrels and with dancing, of course. She was his only child. He had no son or daughter except her, right? He had to know that detail, right? When he saw her, he tore his clothes and said, "Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low." I mean, this is the most despicable victim blaming I've ever seen, right? Like, you made a dumbass vow to the Lord is what happened. You have made me very low. You have become the cause of great trouble to me. This guy really isn't very smart. Yeah. For I have opened my mouth to the Lord, and I cannot take back my vow. No. She said to him, "My father, if you've opened your mouth to the Lord, do to me according to what has gone out of your mouth. Now that the Lord has given you vengeance against your enemies, the Ammonites." And she said to her father, "Let this thing be done for me. Grant me 2 months so that I may go and wander on the mountains and bewail my virginity, my companions and I." We're going to come back and discuss that a little bit more, but let me just keep going. "Go," he said, and sent her away for 2 months. So she departed, she and her companions, and bewailed her virginity on the mountains. At the end of 2 months, she returned to her father, who did with her according to the vow he had made, which is to offer her up as a burnt offering. She had never slept with a man. So there arose an Israelite custom that for 4 days every year, the daughters of Israel would go out to lament the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite. They are bewailing the fact that here's the thing about this story that I think a lot of people misunderstand or don't like. I think people sell it short. They don't fully get what is being mourned here. It's not just that she's dying a virgin. This isn't oh, poor girl, she never had an orgasm. No, that's not what's happening here. In their language, when you talk about virginity this way, and again, I believe that virginity is a male human construct. It's not an actual state of anyone's body and being. But we treat it as if it is. And now it's a thing that any person can have, but it's really not a thing. We've created a thing. And so for her to die as a virgin means she is not getting to live. She's not getting to provide the one thing she's meant to give, which is sex to a man. Like they're bewailing she's dying without giving sex to a man. Virginity is about the men. Virginity is about a woman's body. And this is very dualistic and binary. I don't think of humans that way, but I'm just using their language. Virginity is in the Hebrew Bible and even in the Newer Testament, if it's just virgin, then we're talking about a female. And to say she's dying, we're sad she's dying a virgin means we're sad that a man hasn't penetrated her, right? Virginity is a state of a female's body who has not had a penis inside of her. Like it's about whether or not a man has interacted with her body. It is not about, has she gotten to have sex? Has she gotten to have an orgasm? Like, has she gotten to play around and, figure out all the things? Like, it's not about that. Sex in the Hebrew Bible, and as far as I remember and can tell, it's primarily territorial in the Newer Testament as well. Sex is a thing a man does to inferiors, and females fall into the category of inferiors. When people in the Hebrew Bible are talking about virginity, they're talking about a female who hasn't been penetrated by a penis yet. That's what we're talking about. It's not this thing, it's not about something beautiful and lovely. And it's not saying, oh my God, she's dying at the age of 15. No, they're saying she's dying without serving her purpose. Giving a dude sex. Fantastic. The story is not credible to me. An innocent suffering because of nothing. It's sickening to me. And here we go again. Virginia being raised up with this tragic situation is not credible. Here's the thing. I agree with you on a certain level that it's not credible. And yet, people make stupid vows all the time. People cause other people suffering all the time without thinking about the implications, right, of their words and actions. I think that part is actually much more credible than maybe you do. And that's okay that we can see that differently. I'm stunned. The more I sit with these stories and these passages that talk about women through the lens of sex, or talk about marriage through the lens of sex, or talk about women's as bodies that are owned and claimed by men, things like that. The more I sit with it, this thing about, I have intro students. So I teach intro to Hebrew Bible 4 times a year. And I always ask students to pay attention to the story in Judges. What is it that they're mourning? And they're like, well, they're mourning because she doesn't get to have sex. I'm like, nope, that's not what they're mourning. They're mourning that she's not getting to serve one of her primary purposes in life, which is to give a man sex. Just think that's a thing that everybody should sit with and think about. And on that note, I think we should just, where's the angel of the Lord at that time to prevent the sacrifice? Exactly. God doesn't accept this, right? No, God does accept this because nobody's, yeah, right. Well, great question, Ray Rodriguez. And again, I think just to separate the two. So there are two things happening. I'm trying to point out these are ways that people talk about things. And I want to make sure everybody understands this is not about, we're sad she doesn't get to have pleasure. It's, we're sad she doesn't fulfill her purpose as a vessel for a man's penis. That's the thing. They're mourning. But also, yes, the storyline of the book of Judges is reminding us over and over and over again that these guys are not sufficient leaders. They're not making wise decisions or sound decisions. Jephthah's gotten caught up in the pre-war hoopla or whatever. And so we actually can't trust him to make a sound decision is kind of what what this is saying. Right. Just as we will look at Judges 19, which is a parallel to Genesis 19, very convenient that way. In Genesis 19, yes, God stops the rape of people through the angels. In Genesis 19, in Judges 19, they don't stop the rape of people. And so it's a parallel. We're trying to say something. We're using this trope, however you want to look at it. But here, I think God accepts the sacrifice because the story doesn't tell us otherwise. The whole point here is to show that people are making quick decisions that aren't wise decisions. Do you know what I mean? They're not actually sound leaders. They might be useful. He's a great warrior, but he's not a sound, politician or whatever. Not seeing the big picture all the time. So not fully trustworthy. We need a king instead. It's kind of the whole point of the book of Judges. And to show that the people themselves are just falling apart morally without a sound leader. And so that's another function of the book of Judges. When we get to the end, which is Judges chapter 20, maybe 21, we have, it's pretty clear that people are falling apart without a righteous king. And so we need one. And that's what kind of ushers in anointing Saul first and then David as the second king. Yep. Men not knowing what women are doing, making up stories. I'm not going to disagree with that one. Doy, not going to disagree. Yep. Yeah, all good stuff. Thanks for being here, folks. It is it's a wrap today. This is a wrap. I'm pleased to have been here with you. I appreciate some of you showing up to join me live. And as always, I enjoy that. And thanks for watching this later. If you've made it all the way to the end as the replay, thank you for that. Thanks for helping me do this. If there weren't people out there wanting to see this, I wouldn't be doing it, right? So thanks for spreading the word about this kind of stuff. And I will see you all on Thursday.